So, are you out here in support of the rally?
I am.
Okay, so do you mind if I ask, what's your position on abortion and all of these things surrounding it?
Um, I personally,
Yeah.
it would not be the choice that I would make.
Okay.
But I'm here because I'm allowed to make that choice.
Okay.
The government should not be telling us
Yeah.
what we can and cannot do
Yeah.
with our own bodies.
Yeah. So just to make sure I understand, so you're not technically pro-choice or whatever,
I think-
properly as they would be, but you're just saying the government shouldn't be a part of our choices in health and those
It's
things.
still pro-choice. I feel like it's still pro-choice
Okay.
because, what somebody else is going through, I don't know, and I have no right to make those kind of decisions. I
Yeah.
just know that when it came down to me making my decisions,
Yep.
I did not choose to have an abortion. But again, I had the right to do that.
Okay.
Who knows, if I had a child with a disability, would the government say, no, you can't do that because we're not going to support that child with
Right.
that?
So if you were pregnant and you had a child with a disability, you would choose to end the life of the child.
It would depend on the disability. Is it something that, is there any chance of a life at all?
Yeah.
There's so many, this is why we have healthcare. We screen for these things. And, why are you going to go through this heartache of carrying this baby that might die within, the first moments of its life? Why are you going to put yourself through something like that?
Right. So can I ask you, why would it be okay for my wife? So we just had a baby. We have a 1-month-old.
Congratulations.
Thank you. He's a wonderful boy, and we love him greatly. But say if we screen for these tests, why does the value of his life go down if he has a disability?
The value of his life doesn't go down, but in my own personal opinion. But it's one of those, where are you in your life, that are you able to handle that kind of responsibility? Are you able to provide for that child? Are you going to be able to give everything that that child's going to need? Again, those are all choices that people make. Where I was 20 years ago and where I am now, my choices could be different. You never know until you're in that situation.
So is there a standard for our choices? Does that make sense? So is there a way to say that choice is wrong or that choice is right at all? Or is it just whatever your opinion is, that's okay?
I don't think there is a right or a wrong. I think that's part of why, I'm out here is because, it's your life, it's your body, it's your choice on what you're going to do.
So no right or wrong in all of life or in just this issue?
In this issue, of course, there's going to be some things that we're going to say are fundamentally wrong. Pedophilia, that's to me absolutely wrong. But then if you get a pedophile out here, they're going to say something completely different. So
yeah, I've talked to one that said that it was okay.
yeah,
Right. So how can we say yes or no? Right. So what standard can we set up then and say, it's okay to end the life of a baby in the womb, as long as it's, it matches A, B, and C disability. That's what your position, right? Unless I'm misunderstanding, that's fine. You can tell me if I am.
that's more of a one of the reasons why people can choose.
Just one of many.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you believe? Because you said there are right and wrong, inherently things that are just wrong, or just right. So what are those things? Is murder wrong? Is stealing wrong? And if murder is wrong, why is it wrong?
See, and again, it's one of those, what were the circumstances, in that? That's why we have, juries to, make those cases. Without those kind of laws, we would have absolute chaos. But then, when it comes down to it, it's these are the choices that I'm making. These are the consequences I know that will occur because of that.
Yeah. Okay, so say I'm walking down an alley. I come across a guy who's just sitting there, right? He's a homeless guy, no job, contributes nothing to society. Would it be okay for me to then kill him, right? He has nothing to society. You said in some circumstances it is okay to murder, right? Would that be one of those situations where I could just take his life? Because, he has nothing to society. Say he's even deaf, so he couldn't even hear, he couldn't even get a job if he wanted.
Okay, first of all, if you're deaf, you could still get a job.
Right.
There's, you know,
And I have several different. I'm not saying that deaf people are incapable of getting jobs. I'm
Right.
saying this man in this specific situation. Say there's a list of disabilities that he has.
so why is it that you get to make that decision?
Well, that's my question to you.
Yeah.
So my position is murder is wrong always. Right. So my position is because I believe that God's word is true. I believe that God created the world. I believe that He has set the standard for justice, and in God's law, murder is wrong always. Right. Now there is justice. Right. So if a man takes a life in murder, then there is justice, and and God's law doesn't classify justice coming down on that person as murder, even though it's the ending of a life, because it's not innocent. Right. He deserves this.
So tell me, where is the separation of church and state? Because what
Yeah.
you're talking about is church law, God law.
Yep.
Not everybody believes that there is a God.
Yeah. So church
why
and
are
state.
you bringing that into a conversation that has nothing
So
to do with God?
when church and state was initially set up by our fathers, our founding fathers, what they meant is the spheres of government, namely pastors and governors, the king or whoever, the president, should not have authority between each other, right? So the pastor should not be the president should not be a pastor. What they didn't mean was God's separation from people.
How do you know that?
It's recorded clearly through,
They didn't have recording devices there. How do you
well, not
know-
recorded, but it's
how
recorded
do you
in
know
documentation.
that that's really what they meant? Because
You can read things like Samuel Rutherford, you can read Junius Brutus on these documents, right? And he records the same type of things.
Okay, so I get that we are here based on our founding fathers, but it was also, why were we here? Because we didn't want to pay taxes.
Yeah. So
So,
I was just telling you
tell
my
me-
position. My position is God's law is justice, and
Okay.
God's law is the standard by which I live, and I have justice. So God's law would tell me I can't go into the alley and murder that person. I'm asking you, what standard do you have to not murder that person?
There's two standards. One, my personal belief that that would be wrong, and two, that there is a law that says that you can't do something like that.
And I respect that, right? So my question then would be, what if my personal choice, your personal opinion changed, and you think it's okay now because they contribute nothing to society and they're super disabled?
That is not a criteria for what somebody's going to live or die.
Okay.
You know?
Okay, so what is the standard for if someone does live or die then?
Why does there have to be a standard? It's not up to me if someone's going to live or is going to die. You're taking a context of something totally different than what people are out here for.
So I believe that abortion is murder,
Okay.
right? So abortion is a life. This is a person, right? The baby in the womb is a person.
In your opinion.
It's unique from the mother.
In
It has
your
its own.
opinion.
It has its own
If it was
DNA,
unique to-
according to
if
science.
it was unique from the mother, it wouldn't be attached to the mother. It wouldn't be relying on the mother to actually survive. That's actually, what is it? An infestation, or it's
A parasite.
Yeah.
Well, the definition of a parasite is that it's a life force that's totally different from the person. So it's a leech on a human, right? That's not a human.
Okay, so you
The baby
just
is a
said-
human.
but you just said that the baby is alive and
But it's a human, which differentiates it from a parasite. And
because we're going
even
with
when the
the
baby,
science,
so
that science
so my
also doesn't
baby
know everything.
my baby now still needs my wife to live. He still needs his mother to live.
But somebody else could also take over the care of that child. When that baby
But
is
he
in
would
my womb, no one else can take that baby and make that baby survive.
So at what point would it be okay to not murder a baby?
I don't know. That's not up for debate.
Should I
That's
be?
not what this is about.
I
This is
I
about
think it
this
certainly
my-
is.
No, well, that's your opinion. That's absolutely your opinion.
So
You
Is there any
your
point-
opinion is you don't have an abortion because you believe that it's murder. Great. Again, that's your choice. And you've been allowed to make that choice. What if the government stepped in and said, no, you can't do that?
they're trying to do that here
No, they're not. They're giving the ladies the choices as to whether they're going
to murder their
continue-
children.
To give them the right to choose whether or not they're going to keep this baby or not. And the same thing is true if the government could turn around and say, hey, you've had 20 children, you can't take care of them, the government's doing it, and now you're not going to have that any more babies. They could go ahead and do a law like that as well.
I don't think they should be allowed to do that.
They didn't believe that 50 years ago when Roe versus Wade came about, that they were going to not do this. And we're back in this legislation.
Roe
again.
versus Wade is not law either. right? States don't have to obey it. We have the same type of thinking with marijuana. It's federally illegal, but states are allowed to defy it, right? Say Colorado, for instance.
Everybody's allowed to defy anything. It's whether or not you're going to accept the consequences for those actions.
I agree.
So we are lawfully.
Stop being fast. Close their legs.
Okay. Oh, he's talking about, actually having safe sex, and that's what he's saying. Keep yourself from getting pregnant. But again, that's not 100% either.
Right. So, let me just recap, make sure I understand your position here. So, as long as it's in the womb, it's up to the mother, right? It's up to the individual mother's choice to say whether or not they're going to have this baby. So, let me ask you this question. Is there any inherent value to a baby in the womb?
I think that's up to the person that's carrying it, if they value that child or not.
Yeah, so my question is about it.
Carrying that child.
My question is about inherent value, right? So not assigned value by the mother, but inherent value in the person. Does that baby have value because it's a baby?
Do I have value because I'm here? Does that tree have value because it's here? It's all.
I believe you do.
If somebody values it.
I believe you do, because God has told us that you're made in the image of God, and so you therefore do have inherent value, and you do. I do believe that. I respect that. I love that in you. I think it's beautiful.
God gave us free will, and He wouldn't have done that if He wanted us to be little robots and just doing, whatever
I don't
He
think
says. No,
His
that's
law.
why He gave us free will, and
His
that's
law.
why there should not be legislature limiting what we can and cannot do.
Yeah. Well, I don't believe in free will. That's a philosophical category that doesn't exist in the Bible. But God still gave us law and justice,
That's very
right?
convenient that, I believe what I believe and you believe what you believe. And why can't we just respect that? And respect people to have the choice of what they're going to do with their own body.
Because, like you said earlier, there are things that are right and there are things that are wrong, and murder is wrong.
That's if you view this as being murder.
It's the taking of a life.
It could be a saving of a life, too. It could be saving of two lives. You don't know that.
Did you know that
Why is the baby's life more valuable than the mother's life?
I don't think that it is. I think that they're
That's
both.
making that choice.
I think that they're both very valuable.
You're making that choice for somebody else. By legislating and saying that you can't control what's happening to your body, you're making the choice that baby's life is more important.
That's
than the
not your
mother's.
body. It's a baby.
It's my body. It's my body.
It's inside your body, but it's not your body.
It's my body.
It's a baby.
It's not born. It's my body.
So can I kill a child all the way up until the point of birth?
You know what? If you want to consider it as killing a child, really, that's inflammatory.
I totally believe that. I definitely believe that.
That's fine. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it wrong. Like I said,
So
that's what we're here for. It's my uterus. It's my body. It's my choice. That's all it is.
so the
It's
thing.
not about whether or not you agree or not, because it's really, like some of these signs say, it's nobody else's business.
Science doesn't agree either. Science says it's a unique life outside of yours.
You know what? I work in science, and there's a lot of different people who believe in different things. Okay?
So you believe it's the same life force as the mother?
The same life force?
You believe that
Where
the
does that even come from?
you believe that the baby.
Life force.
You're saying.
Is there a life force if that baby's not inside my womb? Would it survive?
No, it wouldn't survive. It needs its mother.
Okay.
Absolutely, because that's the way that God has designed the world.
Or is it science that designed the world?
God designed the world.
Science
And
or God? Science or
so
God? That's
let me-
where you're going again.
That's not
Science or
true.
God. Yes, it
Science
is.
and God can
Oh,
exist.
oh, okay.
So I believe that the Christian worldview is the only one that can justify using science anyway. So I assume that you.
So the people who are not Christian, then, the ones, let's say, who are right now in Afghanistan, who are, trying to get women's rights, who no longer have that. This woman's husband, who beat her, almost killed her, was let out of jail, and now he's allowed to go out and go and kill her.
I think that's totally wrong. But I believe. But I'm allowed.
That's their religion, and that's what they believe that their God's telling them to do.
That's fine. They have a false God.
Oh, okay.
The true and living God has said life has meaning, and life has purpose and life has value, and you are not allowed to, as another human being, take that life.
Until I speak with God and I find out from God himself when he thinks that life actually starts, I have nothing more to say.
We got it spoken.
Yeah, God has spoken in his word, and you can just read it in the Bible.
According to you.
I mean,
Who are you?
my name is Jared.
You're a guy on the street.
I'm a pastor from a church here in town.
On the street that asked me my opinion, and I told you that.
And I
you
respect that.
No, you don't, because you want to argue with me about that. And there's really nothing to argue about. I believe that people have a choice, and they should be allowed to make those choices. Whether it's right or wrong, we're all making choices, and we all have to bear the brunt of those choices that we make, the consequences of those. Whether it is by law or if it's when we're dead and there's some sort of afterlife. That's it. You have no right to be dictating what you believe to everybody else. If people want to listen to you, that's fine. That's great. Tell people what you believe. I'm telling you what I believe. Yes. And, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. That's all there is to it. But I truly believe that people have the right to make choices that they want to make. I have the choice if I want to be Christian, if I want to be Buddhist, if I want to be atheist. No one should be able to take that right away from me, and my rights shouldn't be changed because you believe in a God and maybe I don't.
But certainly you agree also, at some point opinion is just opinion. It's not truth, right?
All this is whether you believe or you don't believe when you're talking about God.
To an extent, we believe in God or we don't believe in God, but just because you don't believe in him doesn't mean he doesn't exist, right?
Just because you believe in him doesn't mean he does.
Your opinion. So let me ask you, if we...
You have your opinion, I
So-
have mine. You make your choices based on what you believe and what you feel, and I make those choices, and we should be allowed to make those choices.
Yeah, so let me ask you this then. So you don't believe that God exists, right? You just said that.
I do believe that God exists. I said hypothetically, you believe God, I believe in God, but the God you believe in might not be the same God that I believe in.
Okay. I misunderstood then. I misunderstood. So you said you work in science. What field do you work in?
I actually, I'm a nurse.
Oh, you're a nurse. Do you one of the hospitals here?
Yes.
Cool. I just had to stay in the hospital for a whole week when we had that baby, so not very comfortable beds, but that's okay. The little pull-out couch thing is not great, but
They're not meant to be, I don't think.
and that's fine.
It's like a hotel, and there's not the funding to get super comfy.
So can I ask you then, you said you believe in God. Can I ask which God you believe in, or what religion you belong to?
I don't believe in religion. I believe that there is a God. I believe that religion comes from how people are interpreting whatever it is that they're interpreting.
So there is a higher power kind of deal, but not necessarily, there doesn't necessarily need to be an organization of worship to him.
Because what I've found is that every organization, they've interpreted it however they want to, and they each have their own intolerances.
What do you mean by intolerances? What do you mean?
Well, like, you're intolerant of anybody choosing to have an abortion. That's one thing right there. We're supposed to be, I believe that if, there truly is a God, the God that I believe in loves everybody, wants everybody to learn, wants people to learn from the mistakes that they're making, but they need to make their own choices. He didn't put us here to just do what he wants you to do.
Is that God that you believe in? Is he a just God, right? Hypothetically.
Again, you're talking about what is justice. I agree. I don't know everything. I don't know what's, going through his mind or what his plan is. And, what I might consider to be justice, he might not,
Yeah. So I'm just making sure I understand, because I want to respect you as who you are. So you believe that there is a higher power? You believe that this higher power hasn't necessarily, though, come down and spoken in any way? He may have, right? We might have truth in the Bible or the Quran or, the Book of Mormon. One of these books might be true, but we can't be sure, and therefore we don't have a standard necessarily of objective justice, right? One that could stand no matter what. But instead, we'll just have to kind of wait and see, right? Am I tracking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we certainly don't know everything. We don't know all the facts. What we know is, certain people's opinions about those facts and how that, affects, you know.
Right.
What,
So, like, so why then would you say the Bible is not justice, has no standard of justice? What do you have to weigh against that to say no?
that would just be my own belief. I don't believe that came from God. I believe that people wrote that over the years because of circumstances that they were in at the time. So certain things made sense at the time. Not eating pork, it made sense at the time because people would get, salmonella. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So that saved a lot of people by doing that and making that a law.
So,
Am I going to hell now because I eat bacon?
no, I don't think so. In fact, because the Bible has told us that it's okay.
But that was again a religious belief. It's still some, is it Islam, that you don't eat.
I think it's Jews. Yeah.
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 It's Jews
So,
pork, but,
yeah. So
not
I.
having your dairy with your meat and all of those things. I mean, I think those are all things that are great, that it shows that your devotion to God by still practicing those things. But I really think that they were put in place at the time when, there was a danger to people to have those things.
So I believe that it was written by men, right? Moses wrote a good amount of books. Joshua wrote, Samuel wrote, David wrote, Paul, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all those guys wrote their own books, right? So I don't believe that God just kind of spoke something into existence. That's not the Christian belief anyway. The Christian belief is that men wrote under the inspiration of the Spirit, right? We believe that from the Bible. The Bible's told us that. So
That they wrote. You say this, you say, well, they told us because it's in the Bible, but then in the same breath you're saying, but that was inspired by the Holy Spirit, so it must be true because they said that in the book. Do you see it's very circular?
yeah, well, all worldviews are circular. Your worldview would be circular too if we examined scientific things. You would eventually just say, well, I believe science because science proves science.
I don't know. I think there's still a lot out there we don't know about science.
So
that's why we research.
how then could you justify, how then could you repeat a test, right? How does the scientific method work, right? We prove something and then we repeat we can repeat it,
It's
right?
repeatable.
So how can something be repeatable then, if that?
You don't have all the information, and then you find something else out, and then it's like, oh, well, this is true only in this circumstance.
Okay, so let me ask you this then, because I'm just trying to get to know you, because we just met today. So, do you believe in evolution?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so the world came about millions, billions, however long, a super long time. Took everything to get here, right? People started as single-celled organisms. Eventually, at some point in that long history, became, however you believe we got here, fish or monkeys or whoever. But it's a random universe, right? Random things happen.
Well, if you believe in science, there's some sort of theory that there is, what's the word I'm looking? There is a pattern to the chaos, and we just have to find it.
Right. So what if I told you we found it, and it's God?
I would say, it's above my pay grade and my ability to comprehend something like that.
Yeah. So the Bible tells us that science is possible because God upholds the universe, and therefore things are repeatable because they rely on the same God always.
I never read that in the Bible.
So Hebrews 1:1, for instance, says that that Christ upholds the universe by the word of his power.
Okay.
Right? We have several other places where we're told that God upholds all things in his hand, right? That he holds all things together, that in him all things move and have their being. Right? So science to the Christian worldview then makes more sense. Right? So we have repeatable things that could happen, where in an evolutionary worldview I have kind of random things happening on random things that may not be repeatable, and if not, it should be ridiculous, at least to the scientific worldview, no?
I don't know. I did not follow that at all.
Okay, so evolution believes, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, so maybe you don't believe this. random matter brought random matter into
Oh,
existence.
see, that's not my definition of evolution.
Okay, what is yours then?
My definition of it is more that, as circumstances are changing, you're adapting to those changes to encourage life. So like the fish that, they had to swim away and, go deeper and deeper into the ocean to survive. It's darker. So now, they don't need the eyesight that their ancestors did, because now they've developed other senses to survive in that environment.
Okay, so why did the single-celled organism split into a multi-cell organism?
Better survival, I guess. If it really started with a single cell.
Oh, so we don't know.
We don't
That's what you're
know.
saying. Okay.
I mean, there's people who believe it was just the Big Bang, right?
Right.
Bam.
Right. You don't believe that.
I don't know.
So you believe in a higher power, though, right? So do you believe that higher power has anything to do with any of it? Or is he just kind of existing and one day we'll get to meet him?
I believe that he has a plan, and it's kind of arrogant for us to try to think like a god and, interpret what that is.
What do you mean by think like a god?
Trying to figure out what is his plan. You're going to drive yourself crazy trying to think of what's his plan.
I don't think I have to figure it out because I think he's spoken.
So you know. If you
Yes.
have to figure it
I
out, you know.
I believe that we know what
That's-
God has said. That's why I'm here.
That is great.
Because I
don't
believe-
that.
Because I believe, as all Christians have always believed, that God has spoken and he's given justice and he's given morals, right? Even our founding fathers believed that, even though most of them were just theists, right? But they still believed that God's law was good. Whether they were theists or Christian, they still believe God's law is good, right? And they didn't believe that the state should be separate from the law of God. They believe it should be separate from the church, but that's different, right? And now they were inconsistent in that they had things like slaves, right, which I believe were wrong, totally wrong to buy people. But I think it's also wrong to take the life of another, and that's why we're here today, right?
That's why you're here today. I'm here to make sure that women are still able to make the choices that they want in their own lives and not be dictated by the government. You didn't convince me, sorry.
Yeah,
But-
I mean, I didn't think I was going to convince anybody today.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of these beliefs are really entrenched in who you are and what your experiences have been. And I mean, 20 years ago, I was, absolutely, totally against abortion, But life happens, and you see the results of legislation like this. I've seen people die getting illegal abortions who didn't need to die.
I agree. They don't need to die.
If they could have gotten safe abortions, they would still be here.
Okay. Well, I think we're.
Sorry,
I
get
yeah.
emotional
No,
when
that's
I say
okay.
that.
I understand. It's an emotional issue, right?
You know,
It's the issue of life, essentially, right?
see
Whether you agree.
see young women die because they don't feel they have any other choices, and they can't get the care they need in a safe environment.
Yeah. It's a very emotional issue. I agree.
Pick and choose who you're going to save. We're not God. We can't save everybody.
That's true, and that's the reality of this life is that we will die, right? And I think at this point we've kind of come to the point where neither of us are going to convince each other, right? So let me just
So
leave.
what's the point of the conversation?
I wanted to hear you out. I wanted you to hear
I
what
don't think that's the point of the conversation.
I wanted you to hear what I had to say too, because a lot of times we don't get heard out here. Most people don't have the respect for us to stop and talk either like this. And I want to have respectful conversation, right? That's what we want to do.
Well, and the thing is, you guys have your rallies too. I've been to those as well.
Yeah.
And it's all about respecting other people's beliefs.
Yeah.
But it's not something that should be legislated.
Okay.
If you don't believe that this, should happen, don't do it. Those aren't your choices.
I think we have more choices as people. That's why we have
Well,
legislators and those.
Yeah, come up with, no, that's not why we have legislators.
Well, those are
We have
as the
looked
people.
so far beyond now
as the
What you're
people,
doing.
that's why we have rallies like this. Those are our other choices as voters, as citizens, and those things. So that's what we go about doing, right? So let me just leave you with this thought, and then I'll let you kind of get on your way today. I do want you to know that God has spoken in His Word, that God is just, and that God is gracious enough, even though we're sinners and we've broken the law that He's shown us, to send His Son to die so that there may be forgiveness for all sin, right? Whether we believe it's wrong or not, God has spoken, and that's past opinion, right? And God has sent His Son for the forgiveness of sin, and that's the good news of the gospel. The good news of the gospel is that we don't have to stay lawbreakers apart from this God anymore, but we can come close to Him and be near, right? And that's what I want to leave you with today. Thank you for talking to us.
Oh, well, you're very welcome.
I do appreciate you being respectful and nice. I genuinely do, because not everybody is that way. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you were able to hear me out, and I'm hoping that we agree to disagree.
Yep. I hope to see you again, maybe at one of our rallies. So,
you never know.
I'd love to talk
I was
more.
gonna say, I've been to both sides.
Yep.
You can't make any decisions without knowing,
Right.
where you're coming from.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Welcome.